All right, we're good.
Cool. So, Matt, with the advent of AI and vibe coding, does this mean that the visual editor for experimentation tools is soon to be no more? Is it going to be a casualty of the AI slasher movie thing that's going on at the moment?
Right. Well, yeah, AI is trying to replace literally everything, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all going to be out of a job, poor, homeless, unless the government institutes UBI and all that good stuff. But
And poor old visual
yeah,
editor
who knows?
is first on the block.
Yeah. Well,
Is it?
see, I don't know. I have a biased opinion there because I've never really met a visual editor that I liked or used much to begin with. Like, even when I first started building experiments, I was always handwriting the code for the experiment myself, right?
Yeah.
Like the visual editor is a promise to a non-developer to enable them to be able to set up tests and things. And I think that's okay for simple stuff, right? Like being able to change text or replacing an image, like, things that you would test on landing pages, like almost overly basic stuff that is actually paradoxically harder to test from a statistical standpoint. Right?
Yeah,
So
the simple.
I wouldn't lament visual editors going by the wayside, but again, it's because I don't use it anyway.
Yeah, so I guess just to elaborate more on the point of why WYSIWYGs might be on the chopping block because of AI, because WYSIWYG is kind of like like you were saying, it's just a tool for non-developers to go in and make modifications, and it just usually does a bad job with the code that it generates, and so we're replacing that with a specific maybe with like a chatbot or a prompt tool or whatever, for non-developers to ask questions or just to say, this is what the change I want to make. And then the tool just goes away and edits the code. And then, it's just all about, kind of QAing and stuff like that. Now, there is the reason we brought this up is that we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with Colin Crowell from Chameleon, and I believe that they've implemented or are implementing this sort of thing.
Yeah, he showed off a pretty neat feature
Yeah.
on the roundtable where it was like you could put in a prompt at Chameleon and it would build out the variations for you. Did he also show off a component where like there was like you could see the website and you could like circle a particular element and say like make changes to this thing and it would figure that out? Or was that was it more of a hypothetical that someone else? I can't remember exactly the specifics, but
yeah, I can't remember the specifics. There was stuff that I think were kind of the kind of implementation of AI, which is kind of like give me some ideas of what to do. That bit I'm not so interested in, but there were some parts to it, I believe, if I remember correctly, which actually goes ahead and makes the changes.
Yes.
So and that is interesting because in terms of like scope of the kind of scope that that the visual editor or the AI editor does have access to, it seems to be the same kind of scope as the WYSIWYG editor does have, the visual editor has, in that, like you were saying at the beginning, you can do very simple text changes, and image changes and stuff like that. I guess it's a little bit broader in that the scale of those changes can be larger, so that kind of concentric circle, I guess, for what you can do with the WYSIWYG editor is slightly larger.
Yes, I agree with it. I don't think the visual editor will go away, but I think the addition of AI helps bridge the gap between what the traditional limitations of a visual editor can accomplish versus what a full-on developer just straight writing code can do in an A/B testing tool. Now, there's still probably going to be limitations of like context and finesse and things like that. Like same limitation of stuff currently. Like you're in a WYSIWYG editor, like trying to make changes to a page that wasn't built in that editor to begin with. So like as an example, say if you use like WordPress or something and have like a page builder, well, if you're natively building the page in some sort of visual editor, that's fine. But there's a context gap, especially with A/B tools, where you're editing something that wasn't built in that tool. So there's a whole missing layer of semantic context of like the test tool doesn't innately understand like the semantic layered structure of this HTML. You're just like dragging this element to a different section of the page. And it's going to try and plop it in as best it can or something. And AI might provide an interpretive layer there to help bulletproof things like that better.
Yeah, because I guess it really depends on the way that it's being coded. And because one of the biggest issues that I find with a visual editor is the is like targeting of elements and the code that it writes for targeting elements, especially for single page applications, is just really, really dodgy and flaky and breaks very easily.
Right. It doesn't have the additional context of all of the back-end infrastructure of like how the site is actually being assembled. It can only evaluate against the rendered output that it's seeing, right? So it might grab a selector that works for that specific instance of the page, but then you try to run that on all pages of that type, and it just completely breaks because that selector was, like an auto-generated string of characters, and so it only works in that specific rendered instance, right? There's a whole layer of secret complexity there that a visual editor doesn't have access to.
Because what I would like to see being implemented is not so much the visual editor being replaced by a prompt, but rather for things like that you mentioned, for there to be an AI helper to kind of have a little bit more intelligence when you select a component, for there to be some intelligence behind to say, this is a selector, let me just check which part of that selector I should use. I shouldn't use the ID because that's probably going to change. I shouldn't use the nesting because that's probably going to change.
Or also like the thing the user clicked on was like the header bar of the block, and that's what they're dragging. And so it's like, well, AI can help interpret intent to find the right element to like manipulate and change, versus like with the visual editor, it's like, this is the thing that I clicked on, so this is the thing that's going to get moved.
Okay, just to wrap this up then, what would you say is to go back to the question, do you think AI is going to do away with the visual editor, or do you think the visual editor is going to stick around? For me, I think the visual editor is going to stick around. I don't think AI is going to have that much of a big
impact. Agree 100%.
And I think it's just going to be, and if somebody's smart with it, I think they're going to just make the visual editor better through AI rather than replace it.
I would agree with that 100%, because you're dealing with a visual interface. Like the visual editor just has to exist by the nature of the task that you're trying to perform, right? Like completely eliminating the visual editor and just providing prompts would be not, I could see some cases where if that's like a very sophisticated high-end tool, but again, a tool like that would be targeted at developers, and it probably wouldn't have a visual interface, like a visual editor interface to begin with, right? So there's a niche there where the level of skill or the type of work being done doesn't require the visual editor. to begin
Cool.
with. But yeah, no, I don't think AI will replace visual editors at all.
Hopefully,
I
it
would
just makes
be,
it better.
yeah, I would be super interested in hearing opinions from people that are more actively using visual editors, because like both of us, we're well past the point of using visual, right? Like we write our own code to build variations, and so we probably lack the context of like, I can't even recall the last time that I actually even touched a visual editor, honestly. And so I'd be very interested in hearing opinions of people that are regularly using visual editors to build tests and variations and things.
Cool. And if you please hit us up on GRO Talks to discuss if you are one of those people. But yeah, let's wrap this up. Thanks.
Right.
This was a good one.
Yeah, have a good one.